I was really hoping for the Thanos copter to make a cameo. Oh well, welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And let's be honest, the soundtrack's what most of us are going to go for, right? All in all, there's a lot to unpack, and I'm pretty happy with the story. But of course, like any comic book fan, I have to sit there and say, man, this is nothing like the comics. Wait, is that praise or... Either way, if you're interested in this and more, subscribe to my channel. And for now, let's talk about exactly what my feelings are about Guardians Volume 2. Alright, first off, I am super excited. It was fun, it was interesting, it dragged a little bit in the middle, but for the most part, I really enjoyed this. I do have this feeling that the marvelous way they make movies is a little too comical sometimes, and that some of this could have been a little more serious, but there is quite a bit of seriousness in this movie as well, so I can't make that complaint too much. And of course, Baby Groot steals the show. Now, we all know that there are also lots and lots of Easter eggs in these movies, but this one really had a shocking one. All in all, though, I'm going to have to give it a silver. It's not the best movie I've seen, but it's far from the worst. And you know what? It's not going to unseat any of my top 10 comic book movies, at least not anytime soon. Although I am holding out hope that the other movie coming out next month will do that. For now, Guardians 2 is pretty awesome, and I find it kind of funny, but I'm almost hesitant to throw up a spoiler alert here because so much of what I want to talk about happened in the trailers. But just to be on the safe side, so once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. So the basic setting I think we all know. Space, the final frontier. Well, more like space, full of superheroes. And it takes place in the same Marvel Cinematic Universe, although there wasn't a lot of crossover. There wasn't a lot of references to other movies. It was all very self-contained. We didn't even get another gem. I really thought we were going to. It's the Guardians fighting things in space. For the cosmic stuff, we really do a lot of world building, though. Well, universe building. They managed to reference a lot of the first movie's stuff without just repeating and retreading on the same places. And one of the places they do that best is with the characters. I guess we should start off with just taking a look at the characters that are our returning favorites. Baby Groot is back. It would be easy to write Groot off as nothing more than the comic relief, especially after how well he was handled in the first movie. But you know what? He's a continuation of that whole concept, and yes, he was used primarily as comic relief, but several scenes just would not work without him. So, I'm going to give them a pass on him being downgraded to comic relief, because a lot of his stuff still had some heart-wrenching moments. Speaking of which, we have the character that probably goes through the most growth in the movie, and that's Rocket Raccoon, the tough, take-no-nonsense raccoon that kills just about everyone. I will just say, though, I have this pet peeve of him not liking being called a raccoon, when, seriously, he's a raccoon. In the main comics, he's actually from Earth. Speaking of which, another character that's from Earth in the comics, Drax. Drax is another one that could easily be considered comic relief, but less so in this one than the last. In fact, one of his main relationships is the main thrust of the story, and could be very important to the themes. I'm also going to add in that really heart-wrenching moment talking about his family, and I want to take a minute to talk about that. It would be easy to ignore both Guardians movies as just being popcorn flicks, but there's a really heart-wrenching moment in this one where Drax is talking about taking his daughter to the ponds back in his home, and you have to remember, Drax's only real mission is to kill Thanos, because Thanos killed his family. And that's one of those things that just really has superhero origin written all over it, but at the same time has tragedy. And of course, we then have our main character, well, the one that seems to be, Star-Lord. Alright, so Star-Lord isn't quite as much of a joke in the comics, so last time around in Guardians 1 I kind of felt a little cheesed. But you know what? This Peter Quill has grown on me, and I have to say, he not only has some of the most heart-wrenching moments of this story, even maybe not quite as much as Drax, he also has almost as much growth as Rocket. The moments where they talk about exactly what it means for him to need a father really resonated with me. However, not all of our returning characters were swinging hits. Gamora felt a little cardboard, especially compared to last installment. I really hope that it was just a figment of the way the script was written, because Zoe Zelgadis is a pretty awesome actress, and I know that she did good both last time as Gamora and as Uhura over in Star Trek. So I'm not going to dwell much on her. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, her sister was awesome. I swear, every word out of Nebula's mouth was perfect. The way she held herself in scenes, the way she commanded scenes, even when she was just in the background of them, beautiful. Whoever's giving Karen Gillian direction needs to definitely step up their game. We also then have Yondu. Yondu's an awesome character and is entirely underused in the first movie because he's one of the original Guardians of the Galaxy from the comics. They do have some hints of that, along with Sly Stallone's character that cameos for a little bit that appear to be original main characters from the Guardians. But let's talk about new characters instead of the reoccurring, shall we? We're going to start by rounding off the Guardian team with a new member, Mantis. Mantis is initially introduced as working with Ego, but is quickly joined the Guardian side. So, with that, let's go to her boss, Ego the Living Planet. I have to admit, at first I was a little disappointed to see that this is what Ego looks like in this version. Although, I will also add that they did do some kick-ass stuff with Ego. I have to take it back. They did do some pretty good work at trying to find a way to make a living planet make sense. However, once again they shortcut. They make him a celestial. Now, being a living planet's pretty badass and definitely makes him cosmic tier, but to be honest, he's never been associated with the Celestials before. Part of this is the dumbing down of the modern MCU as compared to the beginning. Way back when they took the Iron Man origin, the Captain America origin, and ran with them. In this case, especially a lot of the Guardian stuff, they kinda just are like, oh, that'd be too crazy. And I think that's a good segue to talk about the Sovereign. The Sovereign in the comics is completely different. This is actually more like the Kree Empire, or maybe even the Shi'ar Empire. Now, it's ruled by Kismet, who is the sister of Adam Warlock, and one really powerful character in the comics. In this, I don't know, her and her entire race get played more for jokes. Arcade jokes at that. A reoccurring theme of James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy is to take things that could be super badass and kind of downplay them as a joke. This race of super evolved beings became kids playing arcade games. And as much as I knew we weren't getting Warlock going in, even though he's definitely one of my favorite characters in the Infinity Gauntlet story, I was kind of hoping Kismet might take the place of him. But alright, on to the plot. With the exception of a single flashback early on and some storytelling devices, it's pretty linear. And it's kind of funny because I can sum up the entire plot as such. The Guardians of the Galaxy are idiots, they cause their own trouble, they stumble around, and pretty much the plot happens to them, not because of them. And in several cases, maybe in spite of them. Yeah, that sounds bad, doesn't it? Let's talk about point of view for a second. We occasionally jump into the villain's eyes for a second or two, but for the most part we're following the Guardians and what they find. However, there's a trick at the absolute beginning with Groot that I think is hilariously awesome. Baby Groot isn't really combat capable for most of the movie. However, at the beginning, him walking around and stumbling around and dancing around is used as the point of view as this giant monster is being battled. Specifically, they use him to keep the camera on him instead of us actually seeing most of the action, and it actually works out rather well, especially for an opening sequence to be something different, something that feels new. It was cute, funny, and kinetic, and as such, an awesome opening sequence. What about the themes and symbolism? Man, oh man, this thing is chock full of daddy issues between Gamora, Star-Lord, and just everyone, especially Groot not having a family anymore. The idea of Yondu becoming Star-Lord's father, the idea that Rocket doesn't have anyone to call home to because the scientists that made him didn't care about him. The idea of being tough on the outside to hide your fear inside. The idea that you aren't necessarily what people make you, but what you choose to be yourself. And probably one of the biggest, most important themes, I get to choose my own destiny. Now, as far as symbolism goes, we had that playing of catch, we had all the eggs showing the memory, we had Pac-Man. You know what? I don't know where else to fit it in here. So, you know what? I want a Heather Locklear and Skeletor and Pac-Man statue for my house any day. But where those were the elements of fiction, let's get down into what I liked and didn't like about the Guardians, and there'll be a little bit of retread here. But we do this as the good, the bad, and the ugly, so let's start this off with the good. And let's start with the obvious, the comedy. Anytime that they are telling jokes or being funny, it is hysterical. Maybe a bit overdone in places, but definitely funny. The other thing is their pairings. They managed to pair up each of the Guardians with someone so that they could express and grow in a unique way. And the first one is Yondu and Rocket. A big point is played up early at the fact that Rocket drives everyone away. And, of course, we have the fact that Yondu does the same. And the fact that Yondu ends up sacrificing himself shows us the fact that maybe Rocket has learned his lesson and won't be pushing the Guardians away. They weren't the only good pair. The other one, the next one is Gamora and Nebula. If you had asked me going into this movie what my thought of Nebula was, I would have said that point blank there was nothing they could do to redeem her. She's going to be the villain. I know how this Infinity Gauntlet story plays out with her, and she's important for it, so she's not going to die. But realistically, she's just a bitch. And by the end of it, I actually liked the sisterly relationship these two had. In fact, they actually go against type for a little bit here, at least as far as gender casting goes. How many times have you seen two brothers be against each other for a whole portion of the story, but once they get into a good fist fight, they work out all of their anger issues and then can come back stronger together? Well, that's pretty much the arc these two have. But then there's also Drax and Mantis, the two outcasts that don't quite understand the way everything else works. And you know what? It was really great seeing the two of them together. It especially gave Drax the big moment where you could find out, as much as he's tough on the outside, how much he's crying on the inside. And giving him someone to teach gave him a little more, I don't know, respectability. And then, of course, the daddy issues. Now, there's a lot I don't like about the way these two story go, but it can't be anything about the way they interact directly. The actual moments they're on screen together, their chemistry is perfect, both when they love each other, when they hate each other, when they're what they want, and when they're just using them. At every point, you got a perfect father and son. The only thing I question is how we didn't get Cats in the Cradle as one of the songs. That brings us to the bad. I already mentioned it, but Adam Warlock is one of my favorite characters, and I liked the fact that they were introducing Kismet in this, and the whole idea of the Sovereign, and just all of it could have been so great, but it felt so wasted. Like, they didn't even really want to do it. And that dovetails nicely into the fact that as much as they do comedy well, they do comedy too much. There's no reason why the Sovereign couldn't have been an extremely badass and threatening foe. There's no reason it had to be turned into a bunch of petulant teenagers playing video games. And the final bad is the lack of connectedness. The Guardians feel like they're not in the main Marvel universe, the MCU, especially when they have multiple scenes on Earth, including something bad happening that could have used some superheroes. They could have easily spared a moment or two to have a cameo. And that brings us to the ugly. And really, there isn't anything. There was good and there was bad in this. And there are going to be people that come out of there hysterically laughing. And there are going to be people that come out of there scratching their heads, not quite understanding everything that's going on. And there are going to be some comic fans that are just pissed off because comic fans are easy to piss off. But at the end of the day, there's nothing really horrible or ugly about this movie. I don't think that it's going to be anyone's favorite MCU movie. I doubt it'll even be most people's favorite Guardian of the Galaxy movie. And as far as part twos of movies in the MCU, it's nowhere near as good as Winter Soldier. But having said that, it's not exactly Thor Dark World either. I doubt that anyone's going to put this as the worst movie in the MCU. And trust me, there's some contenders for that. I expect this movie is going to make a lot of money, and is going to get a lot of good word of mouth. So let me defend my silver rating, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there thinking it should be gold, maybe even higher. But at least Electrum, right? I don't think this one's going to have staying power. I don't think people are going to be like, ooh, I really want to rewatch Guardians 2. Especially since the soundtrack isn't as good as the first one, even though it is still good. I think it's a middle-of-the-road movie, and I think it's a damn good movie, but not a great movie. And to be fair, not every movie can be a runaway successful hit like Winter Soldier. So, all in all, if you're still watching this and are wondering if you should go see it in theaters. You'll have a ball. You'll enjoy the action, you'll laugh. Maybe there's a few points where you'll wish that they had kept it a little more serious, but all in all, you're going to enjoy this movie. I just hope that it's the second best MCU movie out this year. Maybe the third best, depending on if you count Homecoming. But let's quickly just talk about some Easter eggs before I let you go. This is not the original Guardians team, even though it's the one that Abnett brought back in the early 2000s. The Guardians actually go back to the 70s and 80s. And I think that the team that Sly Stallone put together is supposed to be the original Guardians, and that they're kind of alluding to the fact that in this universe the Ravagers are the original Guardians, and that it kind of makes sense that way. But I'm not 100% sure and don't really know all those characters that well, so we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure someone will have a video up shortly explaining who everyone is there. And another Easter egg that I think that I'm going to have to explain over and over again is, no, Stanley is not a Uatu the Watcher, although he was definitely seen with the Watchers. You see, he is making a joke about the fact that, oh, that time I was, because, yes, he's cameoed in every Marvel movie ever. But the real trick here is that there are Watchers, and I hope that that's going to play a part in the Infinity Gauntlet, because a Uatu is one of my favorite cosmic beings. It's a great homage, and in one of the end credit scenes when Stan goes, hey, wait, you guys were supposed to be my ride home? I actually chuckled. I love Stan, and I think we all need to give a big salute to Stan Lee, one of the creators of most of the comic book characters we know. One final thing, and I almost labeled this the ugly, but to be fair, it's not this movie specific, it's Marvel in general, the MCU. 5 years ago, the first Avenger movie ended with Thanos' cameo. Just a couple of years ago, Thanos put the gauntlet on and said, fine, I'll do it myself. And you know what? Seriously, where is Thanos? Where is all this? I know Infinity War is coming, but it just feels like it's so slow of a build-up. And where, yes, there can be a very good argument made, and a very sound one, that they're taking it slow because they're trying to get everything right and lined up. There's part of me that says, well, if they're taking so long, how come they couldn't introduce Adam Warlock, who's so integral to the story? Oh well. Either way, that's not really to do with this review. Maybe it's even just me being a little anxious, because even a bad Marvel movie is pretty good, and this one is probably, like I said, middle of the road, and you'll enjoy it. If you've seen it and have already know what you think, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about it. It's been almost a year that I've been doing these reviews, and I'm going to be celebrating shortly. But for now, I think I've overthought this enough. So if you could like and share this video, I'd really appreciate it. And of course, I'm looking for more subscribers every day, because I'm trying to build a community. A community where we can talk about all of these wonderful stories, dive into what the themes and symbolism is, and talk about what type of characters work and which ones don't, and maybe sometimes just complain just for the sake of complaining. If you're into that, let me know and join our community. For now, I'd like to thank you for taking the walk through the heart of the stories we tell. Have a good night.